Most people don't realize how much of their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making millions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might just sell credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/hidden. Protect yourself now at aura.com/hidden.
I'm Kourtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
And we are two nerds who are here to make Shakespeare easier to understand.
In this podcast, we will explore as many dimensions to Shakespeare's plays as we can by looking at the text, examining the historical context in which the plays were written, and how his plays are viewed through modern lenses of feminism, racism, classism, colonialism, nationalism, ableism, all of the isms.
We will discuss how his plays shaped both the past and present, and, as theater makers, how his plays can be responsibly performed today, all while trying our best to approach his works without giving in to bardolatry.
So, Shakespeare anyone?
Hi, listeners. Want to support Shakespeare Anyone? Visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. Now, onto the episode. Welcome to another Shakespeare Anyone mini-episode. In these mini-episodes, we'll be exploring topics that are related to Shakespeare but aren't necessarily connected to whatever play we've been discussing.
And they're mini because, well, they're shorter than our other episodes. They're like quartos if the regular episodes are folio editions.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about music and its role in Shakespeare's plays. And by music, we mean both music as a theme or motif in the text, as well as the performance of stage music, like singing and instruments. This is because Shakespeare references and dramatizes music quite a bit, at least more than one might expect from a play, except musicals, of course.
Wait, if Shakespeare uses songs and music in some plays, could they be considered musicals?
Short answer, no. Long answer, musical theater usually features all or most of the characters singing and or dancing to advance the story's plot. And even though music in Shakespeare's plays usually does move the story forward, it isn't the backbone of the play like it is in musical theater. A Shakespeare play might require some actors to have a musical skill because it's called for in the text, and they might hire a band to play on stage as indicated, again, in the text. But overall, the production is usually not musical. Music is more like an extra feature.
But even though Shakespeare's plays aren't musicals, this extra musical feature of his plays is noticeable because characters talk about music literally or figuratively, either by commanding musicians to play on stage or by comparing a person, place, or thing to music. And some characters actually sing, play an instrument, or dance as part of the story's plot.
For example, here are some moments where Shakespeare references music. In Twelfth Night, Orsino opens the play with, "If music be the food of love, play on."
Throughout The Tempest, soft, solemn, and strange music fills the air.
And in Romeo and Juliet, Juliet says Romeo's name is the softest music.
Like we said, Shakespeare doesn't just reference music as an exercise for English lit students to close read. Shakespeare also dramatizes music by assigning music to characters, and this is music the audience would have heard at the theater. Ophelia, Feste, the players in Hamlet, Balthazar and Much Ado, and musicians all sing or play songs. These are just some examples of many. Stage directions and dialogue tells us that some plays must include music.
Therefore, we want to look at how music, like songs and instruments, are used in Shakespeare's plays by examining both music in the text and in the context of the period.
First, let's take a look at music in early modern England because, simply put, music was popular. But what type of music did early moderns listen to? And what were the sounds of Shakespeare's London that may have influenced his plays?
According to Folgerpedia's 2006 exhibition, Noises, Sounds, and Sweet Airs, Music in Early Modern England, quote, church bells ring the time, street vendors cry out their wares, ballad singers push the latest scandal, and music spills from tavern doors. These are the soundscapes of London in the 17th century, unquote. Music was rampant as everyone from the monarch to the groundlings would know the popular music of the day, and musicians, both amateurs and professionals, filled the air with the sounds of music. Ross Duffin, author of Shakespeare's Songbook, notes that people went to the pubs to hear songs, and music was the TV and movies, aka popular entertainment, of the day. And author and professor Catherine Loomis notes that, quote, music was even used as a medical cure. It was taken as seriously as any medicine or any other way of fixing a particular problem, and it was thought to be especially effective with mental illnesses, unquote.
Music could be heard in many places, from pubs, as mentioned, to taverns, to playhouses, to the court, to church, and in the home as private entertainment. The types of music people listened to varied based on the setting. People listened to folk songs, broadside ballads, concert songs, church songs, liturgies, and instrumental music. At public gatherings, revelers sang catches and rounds. Early moderns also watched plays, jigs, and masques, just to name a few. Being able to read music, sing a part, and play an instrument were, quote, regarded as important goals for the upper classes, unquote, with students learning these skills from manuals or musicians employed as tutors.
A ballad for an early modern was a sheet song, a sheet with lyrics printed on it, often with a picture. Ballads were cheap, often sold for a penny, and were, according to author and professor Christopher Marsh, quote, a sort of early commercially organized venture to put songs out as widely as you possibly could, unquote. Broadside ballads emerged out of plays in the theater as a spin-off ballad. There is one about Titus Andronicus that condensed the story and sang it to a tune. The same tune may be used for many different ballads. Customers would buy the ballad from a seller, a ballad hawker, who performed the song to attract buyers. Publication records help us determine the popularity of songs. Christopher Marsh and Angela McShane, a professor and cultural historian, have researched and documented the top 100 songs of the 17th century, and we've linked that website in the show notes.
Early moderns could also hear music in official institutions like the Royal Court or the Church of England. Both Elizabeth I and James I and VI enjoyed music. After all, this is the English Renaissance. Elizabeth played musical instruments, sang, and employed musicians to play for dancing. James, on the other hand, was a fan of court masques, which rose in popularity during his reign. The masque was a genre that included music, dancing, singing, and acting, with elaborate scenic and costume elements, often designed by famous architects. We discussed the court masque in a previous mini-episode, so go listen if you haven't already. Church music was also popular due to Elizabeth's reestablishment of the Book of Common Prayer, which contains psalms or liturgy to be said or sung. Composers, quote, began creating music for an English church that would offer a distinctive blend of traditional and reformed practices, unquote. Composers also wrote elegies for the deceased, adding musicality to the process of mourning and honoring the dead.
But music in Shakespeare's time was ephemeral. They didn't have recording devices to archive the sounds for us to listen to centuries later. So, how do we know about their music?
Our knowledge of early modern music has been pieced together by researchers and historians using musical culture such as surviving manuscripts, books, images, and musical instruments. The Folgerpedia exhibition referenced earlier includes a sample of books, papers, engravings, and instruments that help us understand the music. Music textbooks and illustrations show that musicians played stringed instruments, reeds, and percussion.
Popular instruments include, but are not limited to, the lute, oboe, drums, recorders, virginals, and citerns. A virginal is a keyboard instrument of the harpsichord family that is smaller, rectangular, and legless. According to Mary Springels, founder and former director of the Newbury Consort, these instruments are easy to fit into a domestic space, and Queen Elizabeth I played the virginal. The Victoria and Albert Museum in London has one of Elizabeth's virginals, also called a spinet, in their collection, which you can see online. In Sonnet 128, Shakespeare refers to the virginal as being plucked.
Shakespeare also writes about other instruments. For example, the ever-popular and, according to Springles, difficult instrument, the lute, is written about in sonnets and in a version of Ophelia's mad scene in Hamlet. Stage directions from Quarto I in 1603 include, quote, "Enter Ophelia playing on a lute and her hair down, singing," unquote. Hamlet also references another popular instrument, the woodwind recorder, which many American students learn how to play in elementary school. Hamlet confronts his friends Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and asks them if they think he's, quote, "easier to be played upon than a pipe, the recorder," unquote, and declares that, quote, "you cannot play upon me," unquote. According to Shakespeare, the recorder is an easy instrument to play, and Kourtney and I would agree because we both learned how to play hot cross buns on the recorder when we were 8 or 9 years old. A final instrument to note is the white and blue collar instrument, the citern, a stringed instrument like a guitar. It was an instrument that people played just for fun, and Springles suggests that Feste from Twelfth Night might have played a citern, which makes sense since Robert Armin was a musical fool.
In addition to the musical instruments, some songs and their melodies survive, and recordings of these songs have been made available and can be found online by musicians like Paul Odette.
But, unfortunately, as we said earlier, there are many songs that did not survive. We know this because they are registered in the Stationer's Register, but we don't have surviving manuscripts such as the song's lyrics or tune. But we'll talk more about that in a moment.
So now let's talk about music in the theater. What were the logistics of music and performance?
Actors in early modern theater companies were skilled in more than just acting. According to Duffin, some of the actors in Shakespeare's troupe also toured the continent as entertainers. So, oftentimes, these actors were also able to do one or more of the following special skills: tumble, play instruments, or perform song and dance. Additionally, the young boy actors might have started their careers as choir boys in the children's acting troupes. So, when they moved into the adult acting companies, they brought with them the ability to sing. Shakespeare wrote characters around the talents of his actors, and historians are able to track these changes based on the musicality of his characters. For example, when the clown position changed from Will Kemp to Robert Armin, the clown roles became more musical due to Armin's musicality. Inversely, Quarto I of Hamlet gives Ophelia more songs in her mad scene, perhaps based on the original actor's musicality. Later versions greatly reduce the songs. In Twelfth Night, Viola is asked to play a song, and then it is sung by someone else in the play. Loomis wonders if an actor's inability to sing thus created reductions or reassignments of songs.
Unlike today, when theater musicians tend to perform in the orchestra's pit, the musicians performing in Shakespeare's plays would have performed on stage. Their location would have depended on the playing space and/or that specific play. That's because Shakespeare's troupe didn't just perform in one permanent playing space. They might have performed in an outdoor theater like the Globe, an indoor theater like Blackfriars, at the court like at Hampton Court, or in a courtyard, town hall, or private home if they were on tour. At the Globe, musicians might have played on the balcony space above the stage, while at Blackfriars they may have played above the gallery. According to Loomis, there could have even been an instance of musicians playing under the stage at the Globe, such as in Antony and Cleopatra, quote, "where Antony's spirit or his guiding god is leaving him, and there's a sound of oboes beneath the stage. The stage was wood, so there would have been some really interesting resonant sound effects there," unquote. All of this means that musicians had to be flexible to accommodate for the changing spaces.
Shakespeare's musical moments are explicitly written into the text as dialogue and stage directions, so we know when a Shakespeare play calls for music based on reading the script. All music is diegetic, meaning it exists within the narrative rather than being external. While modern productions might add incidental music to support the tone or mood, much like the score or soundtrack of a movie, the text does not call for this. The sounds that the text does call for vary, so let's discuss them. First, a play might call for a flourish or fanfare when royal figures enter the stage. Thus, musicians would play trumpets or other brass instruments and percussion. The play might call for instrumental music when a character commands musicians to play as entertainment or revelry. The play might also include featured songs that were to be sung and played by actors and musicians. These featured songs advance the plot, comment on something, and/or deepen character. Featured songs are distinct in the script because they are indented and italicized. While many of Shakespeare's featured songs have survived in print, their tunes would only survive as a separate manuscript because the tune wasn't published with the song, unlike in modern librettos.
Tiffany Stern, professor and researcher of theatrical documents, prompts us to consider featured songs as written, rehearsed, and learnt for performance, rather than as literature. Therefore, we must think about songs as a collaboration between the playwright, composer, actor, and musicians. Stern posits that playwrights wrote the song text while concurrently completing the play text. The playwright and composer then worked on the song's tunes externally on a separate piece of paper from the play text. The authorial song survives as a separate piece of paper from the play text. The actor-singer would then rehearse the song separately with musicians and then sing it in performance. The theater's playbook might have a version of the song text, but if not, it would include a stage direction noting the presence of a song. Sometimes the tune could be an original composition, other times it was a popular song, but the final version of the song was always the performance.
We've been using the word surviving a lot to describe early modern musical culture. This means that the material that didn't survive is lost to history. Luckily for us Shakespeareans, quote, Shakespeare's texts as a whole preserve more songs than most, unquote, though there are at least 6 lost songs. The Welsh song in Henry IV Part 1 is a stage direction. Characters in Love's Labour's Lost, Julius Caesar and Pericles, reference songs that are not included in their playbook. 2 of Macbeth's witch songs survived but only as independent sources reused in a Middleton play. The Willow song from Othello is absent from Quarto 2, but it's in the folio. And 2 Midsummer speeches might have been incorrectly formatted as songs by the folio compositor.
Shakespeare's contemporaries, such as John Marston, James Shirley, John Lilly, George Chapman, Francis Beaumont, and John Fletcher, also published plays with lost songs written for their plays. These absent or lost songs created, quote, meaning of that play, but meaning of the play that has been allowed to slip away, unquote. Today, some historians scour the archives to find lost songs, while others scour the archives to pair song text with the popular tune it likely used.
We owe a huge thanks to Peter Sang's The Vocal Songs in the Plays of Shakespeare, A Critical History from 1967 for being, quote, an indispensable reference work assembling all of the available textual, critical, musical, and dramatic commentary on the 70 songs that appear in the canon of Shakespeare's plays, unquote. In fact, footnotes about songs likely credit Sang, but discoveries are still happening. For example, Duffin may have found the lost tune for Twelfth Night's Come Away, Death when he recognized that one of Orsino's lines is a reference to the tune called The Pangs of Love. Duffin, quote, recovered the tune that had been used originally in the song because there was this clue that Shakespeare embedded in the text, unquote.
In addition to the music heard on stage, Shakespeare references popular songs in what Duffin calls a, quote, web of allusions, unquote. In connecting the plots of the plays to popular songs, Duffin argues that, quote, Shakespeare was counting on the fact that everybody knew these popular songs, and when he would cite them or quote them, the audience member would know the song and draw their experience of the entire song into their experience of the play, unquote. For example, in The Winter's Tale, There is a character named Rogero, but Rogero is also the title of a very famous ballad tune. Duffin connected the tune of Rogero to a ballad called The Torment of a Jealous Mind, which tells the story of a jealous husband who suspects his innocent wife and her accused lover, a song with a plot that parallels The Winter's Tale. This web of allusions appears to be unique to Shakespeare, despite other playwrights frequently using music in their plays.
But where do we go from here? The ephemeral quality of Shakespeare's music can be both paralyzing and liberating. Limited musical culture means we sometimes don't know how a song sounded or even what words someone was singing. We're left with questions that only research can help us answer. But, on the other hand, this vacuum means we can reimagine and adapt Shakespeare's music for our times, just like Shakespeare reused the popular songs of his time.
And that's music in Shakespeare's plays.
Thank you for listening.
I'm Kourtney Smith.
And I'm Elyse Sharp.
This is Shakespeare Anyone?
Thank you so much for listening to Shakespeare Anyone. Works referenced in this episode are available in the episode description. Our theme music is Neverending Minute by Sounds Like Sander.
If you would like to support us, visit shakespeareanyone.com/support or check out the links in our episode description. You can also hit the subscribe button, like us, leave a comment, write a review, share us on social media, tell a friend about us, all the things. We'd appreciate it. For more, you can visit our website, shakespeareanyone.com, or follow us on Instagram at shakespeareanyonepod.
Now, because you listened all the way to the end of the credits, here is a completely random Shakespeare quote for you. From Henry VI, Part 3, Act 3, Scene 2, said by Lady Grey. Be pitiful, dread lord, and grant it then.